Hello, and welcome to the February 2021 edition of City Connection with Community Media Center. I'm your host, Linda Gellasch. City Connection is the live television program with Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. This is where you're offered the opportunity to hear about all that's going on at City Hall and beyond. We are back with you live on air, and Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss is joining me momentarily. She'll be by video. Today we'll also spend some time to get to know a new addition to City Hall. Recently joining the administrative staff is Communications Director David Green. We'll have a conversation between Mr. Green and Mayor Bliss later in the show. Let's see, during City Connection, we also provide opportunity for you to have question and answer time with Mayor Bliss, and we'll provide that in the second half of the program. We'll give you some information on how you can do that. You can do that by email. You can email questions or comments to cityconnection@grcmc.org. You can do it through Twitter at GRTV Access or by commenting on GRTV's Facebook page. City Connection, a collaboration between Community Media Center and the City of Grand Rapids, is broadcasting live today, February 21st, 2021, here on Community Access Television, it's Channel 24. We're live streaming as well at therapidian.org and on GRTV's Facebook page, and we will rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 25. And now in the studio with me, Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss by video. Welcome, Mayor.
Well, thank you. Happy New Year.
To you too, and lots to catch up on, and I just want to point out it's February 1st, and things are changing a little bit when it comes to winter, getting outside, getting inside. So I wondered if you just kind of, well, let's start with something happy. Winter outside. We have something here called World of Winter in Grand Rapids, and why don't you tell us a little bit about it? And I've had two opportunities to get out and see a little bit, so tell us what this is.
Yeah, this is us as a city embracing the fact that we are a four-season city and encouraging people to still, even though it's chilly outside, to bundle up and get outside, especially right now with the pandemic. We know that being outside is a safer place to be. And so we've worked really hard with a lot of partners, and Downtown Grand Rapids Inc. has taken the lead on collaborating, but also planning a number of outside events and activities, all at no charge. So they're great for individuals and families alike. They've kind of taken over downtown and filled it with beautiful art installations, interactive opportunities. Obviously, we have the ice skating downtown. If you come downtown, you'll see a bunch of games that have been carved out of ice that you can play, checkers or chess or other games, and it's just really fun. On top of, you can walk around and see all the murals that have been added, as well as support our local businesses by, up until today, sitting outside and finding a spot to be outside, either buy a heater or at a table and order something from one of our local businesses.
So being February 1, there's a bit of a change in state regulation, and can you update us on that, on what's available now?
Yeah, so today, a lot of, not all of them, but many businesses open back up under the state restrictions. So currently, restaurants and bars can open up at 25% capacity, and then they need to close by 10 p.m. So I've talked to a number of business owners. Some of them are opening up. Others have decided that they just can't make the numbers work at 25%. So you think about some of our smaller restaurants that can seat, 20, 25, 30, having 5 to 10 people in the restaurant just doesn't make the numbers work. So some of our restaurants are still closed, but some of them are opening, and they're really hopeful that those restrictions will start to wane, or at least they'll be able to get to a 50% or 75% where they can start to make the numbers work. But for the restaurants that are open and that are opening back up today for inside dining, I encourage folks to get out and support them. Obviously, you can still do takeout and delivery, but it's just really important for a lot of these businesses, if they're going to survive, that we all make a concerted effort to get out and support them.
So do the expanded social zones still exist? Is that something that if you're wearing several layers, dining outside, a possibility?
Yes, so many of them will also continue to provide outside seating and opportunities, and so absolutely, if you're willing to bundle up and grab a blanket and sit outside, that's still an option for you. And then you've seen many restaurants throughout our community, both downtown and in our neighborhoods. They've added spaces like igloos and other enclosed spaces that you can utilize to go out and have a drink or to have a meal with your family and friends.
So far, I've dined in an igloo, in an ice shanty, in a greenhouse, a tiny greenhouse, and then outside. So there's lots of opportunity. I'm taking you at your word and embracing Michigan as a four-season community, and I'm into it now.
And honestly, for anyone who hasn't come downtown, the art installations are just stunning, especially at night when they're lit up. You know, take an hour and come downtown and walk around. You can grab something to drink. There's hot chocolate, coffee, hot toddies if you want them, and you can walk around and really enjoy the just really beautiful art pieces.
So there's some carved pieces on the bridges crossing over the river. There's the lighted art displays by the Ford Museum and the river. And then you said murals, which are kind of under those walkways. Where else? So what else am I missing?
Yeah, so on North Monroe, we have teeter-totters. So get out there and you can interact with those. But then there's been a number of murals that have been added this past year. So some of them go all the way up into our neighborhoods, including on Plainfield. But then also there's a number of beautiful murals downtown here. There's one that's been added on the side of the police department. There's the Ethel Co piece that's been added. There's some great pieces down off of Ionia. You know, you can get around and just, you know, enjoy the art, and really it's transformed many of those spaces.
Okay, all right. Well, let's touch on a couple topics that are important in this community right now. A few things under housing. We've been aware, especially recently, about homeless situation and a little bit of the desperation with that. And I wonder if you could update us on what is going on at the city level to help address that, and a few of the other housing initiatives right now.
Yeah, housing and you know, low-income housing, affordable housing, and working with our partners in the community to make sure we have safe spaces for individuals experiencing homelessness. The priority, it's going to continue to be a priority. And so a couple updates on that. We continue to work closely with Mel Trotter to ensure that there is available shelter space, safe shelter space that's warm for people to have access to running water, and that it's clean, especially right now as we continue to live through this pandemic. We also have a contract with Community Rebuilders for rapid rehousing. So they've been doing very targeted outreach to individuals who are unhoused. So they've found housing, both short-term and permanent housing, for well over 45 individuals who were out living on the street. So they started their effort with individuals who were living on Monroe Center, and now they've expanded that. So we continue to have a partnership with Community Rebuilders. And then to work with all of the different partners in this space. There's a lot of nonprofit organizations who are committed to providing, not just providing safe spaces for individuals who are experiencing homelessness, but then also how do we look to short-term and long-term solutions? Because we know that housing is the solution to homelessness. Yes, we need additional resources and wraparound resources for individuals experiencing a mental health crisis or a substance use crisis, but ultimately we need to make sure that we have safe shelter for individuals, especially as we live through this weather. You know, yes, we want to embrace winter, but we also know that you know, the elements and cold can also be deadly. And we're entering into, as you probably saw, that the weather's going to dip down over the next couple weeks to the lower digits, likely below freezing or below zero. And so we want to make sure that people have a warm place to stay. Other big issues, you know, when you think about housing, you really need to think about the whole continuum. So how do we make sure that we have safe spaces for individuals experiencing homelessness, but also how do we make sure that we have availability of low-income housing and affordable housing across the board in every neighborhood. So a couple of recent things that the City Commission supported. We supported a number of pilots, so payment in lieu of taxes projects. Those are low-income housing projects. Those projects will apply for low-income housing tax credits from the state of Michigan. Hopefully they'll get those, even though it's a competitive process, and we'll be able to move forward with a number of those low-income projects here in our community. We also just recently made several changes to our zoning code, and the most significant one that will open up the opportunity to add housing is that we made changes to our zoning code related to allowing residential use on the ground floor. So as of right now, we have a lot of commercial spaces that are vacant. And historically, those have, the only thing that we've allowed under our zoning is commercial or retail to go into those spaces. So we are now going to allow residential, which likely could lead to several thousand empty units being converted to residential on the main floor, and they'd be accessible for individuals who may have some type of disability. And then another one, just last one I'll touch on, and I was actually really excited and honored that we were selected. So every year, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, they partner with Wells Fargo, and they do a Community Wins grant. And every year I reach out to a nonprofit in our community and we apply. And this past year, I reached out to Community Rebuilders and Link Up, and we submitted a proposal to support affordable housing that has smart technology built into it. And we were really excited that we were selected. So Grand Rapids and this project was selected, and we received a $150,000 grant from the U.S. Conference of Mayors to do this project. And I believe that it can be, I think it can be scaled up. So what it enables is that right within the housing, there will be technology that the family and the individual living in that housing, they will have immediate access to medical and community services through smart technology. So telehealth, through being able to connect with a therapist through technology. They'll be able to look at resources. And so we're starting to try to connect both, all the needs that individuals have, not just with housing, but medical needs, physical needs, mental health needs, and make sure that it's easily accessible right where an individual lives.
Housing, you noted in your earlier stages of your term as mayor, was a priority for you, continues to be. Tell a little bit about that. That comes out in your State of the City addresses. Tell about this year's initiatives for State of the City.
Yeah, so I'll be talking about housing again. As I said, it's a priority. And the challenging thing about housing, and this, we've talked about this before, is that it's a complex issue. And it changes. The needs change based on what's going on in our community. And so right now, with the pandemic, we're very concerned about families being able to maintain their housing, especially once the eviction moratorium lifts. And so we also need to focus on eviction prevention. Mm-hmm. So again, we at the city need to work with our partners to identify what are the current needs, how do we address those, but then also how do we keep our eye on the ball and have a long-term plan to increase low-income and affordable housing throughout our community in every neighborhood. So I'll be talking about that again, but it'll be a continuation of the work we've done in the past, but also trying to accelerate some of the work we're doing, knowing that the needs are going to be even greater this year coming out of the pandemic.
Okay. Well, we are close to break time when we will welcome into the studio via video David Green, the new Communications Director of the City of Grand Rapids. So we'll take a quick break now, and there'll be a conversation between the Mayor and the Communications Director when we come back.
The Rapidian for the community provides an alternative.
To be the eyes of somebody who's not there.
It's more honest, more authentic, and more true.
And you do have the freedom to talk about things because they're things that need to be talked about, not because they'll get readers or viewers or clicks.
Sometimes it feels intimidating to write a news story or to write a story about a community issue. What I love about the Rapidian is that they make it really simple and easy.
So it's not like you have to meet this deadline by this time.
I'll be eating a sandwich in one hand and then I'm like typing in the other.
I love the freedom to be able to write from wherever.
I think it's a really powerful experience when people are able to tell their story and to be heard.
Anyone can have a voice.
anybody can speak.
It's a platform for the community to tell its own story in a very authentic way, and that's powerful.
Community has to be involved in order for it to be sustainable. And so it tells you something about our community.
Welcome back to City Connection, and now in studio with us is David Green, new communications director with the City of Grand Rapids, and when I say in studio, I mean virtually. Mayor Bliss is going to interview new communications director Green, and we'll let her take it from here.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm really delighted to be introducing and welcoming David Green, our new communications director, to our city. So he comes to us from Austin. He has a pretty exceptional background and history. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And then I know I've had conversations with him about opportunities for improvement here at the city, what we can do to improve our own communications and engagement, which again continues to be a priority for us. We're always looking at ways that we can do better, knowing that a lot of the issues that we tackle are complex and they're not easy to understand with just one or two sentence headlines or Twitter feeds. And so we can get a little bit into that on kind of what you hope to accomplish in this new role. But let's just start, David, by maybe you can share a little bit about your history and what brings you to Grand Rapids, what made you interested in this position. I know you have some Midwest roots. Maybe you can talk about that as well.
Yeah, so well, I'll start off with I came here because it's a really cool place to be. So
Yeah.
no, as you touched on, my father was in the military for 26 years, and so I lived a little bit of everywhere. But I did graduate high school in Peoria, Illinois. My wife is from Ottawa, Illinois, which is a little town outside of, about an hour outside of Chicago in the central part of the state. And so her and I are both familiar with here. People keep joking, having come from Austin, Texas, that there's winter here, and we're very aware. I've been out of the Midwest, the northern Midwest, for quite some time though, so my blood's a little thinner than I might like right now. But I'll get back to it. I'll get there. Basically, I kind of jokingly say that I've been undeservedly lucky in my life, and I kind of stumbled upwards into this. I didn't have any intention or any plans to go into public sector communications, and yet when I joined the Army straight out of high school, that's where I landed, and I found I had a knack for it. I had a love for it, both the communications aspect, but the public service part of it. And so I turned what was supposed to be a 3-year stint in the Army to pay for college into a 20-year career. And then in 2015, I retired from the United States Army and was lucky enough to land a position as the media relations director in Austin, Texas. There I worked for both Mark Washington and Doug Matthews. And so after about a 5-year stint, it was time for me to start looking for that next step in my career. And again, undeservedly lucky, a position opened up here at exactly the time I was interviewing at in a few other cities. And so I went through the process here and was lucky enough to, and blessed enough to land the role.
Well, I know that they miss you in Austin, but I'm really delighted to have you here. So welcome. I know you've been how long have you been with us now? Is it eight weeks? 2 months?
It's all been such a blur, and I mean that literally. So I came on board December 14th, I think. So yeah, right around just a little over a month and a half. Yeah.
All right. Well, you and I have talked about this, and probably better than most that how we communicate, especially share information. It's just a different world than it was even 5 years ago. The advent of social media and both being responsive to questions, sometimes responding to misinformation or a lack of information, as well as how do we take some of the complex issues that we're working on and explain them to the community. Like, for instance, pilot, right? Like, I use that word, I know what it means. It's payment in lieu of taxes. A lot of people don't understand how that supports low-income housing projects, what we do with that, with pilots, how it is connected to our housing fund. So it, you know, sometimes here at City Hall, we get mired in bureaucratic speak, and we don't necessarily do a good job explaining that to the community, or explaining how all of these different efforts are really working together as we try to make a positive impact, and that it's not just, there's no one solution to any complex. So with all that being said, how do you as communications director plan to approach really tackling some of those difficult communications issues that we wrestle with?
So I'll start off by saying that right now it's a double-edged sword, right? That we exist in a world where communications are coming at 1,000,000 miles a minute from 1,000,000 different directions at people. And yet we also live now in a world where we have an unprecedented ability to connect with people directly. And you've seen that go on more and more over the past few years. And social media is one aspect of it. This program is another aspect of it that we're on right now. These are these various ways that we have to communicate and connect with the public. The problem, though, is we have to figure out how to cut through the noise, and we have to figure out how to make really complex things simple enough and digestible enough that you can literally consume it in this warp speed world that we're in right now. I think that one of the ways that you do that is you create the invitation, you create the space for the conversation to occur. Trying to sit somebody down and walk them through a PowerPoint of what the pilot program is and how that ties into the larger community development program and how we're going to create more housing, it can be overwhelmingly boring for the average person, and we need to remember that. We get into that. We like that. We're into it, right? We're public servants. We love that stuff. But we have to figure out how to make that digestible and consumable for a normal person. And that starts with, one, understanding what their priorities are and what they want to hear about, but then two, being able to show them why that matters. And you can't do that in 140 characters or 280 characters or whatever we're at with Twitter now. But what you can do is you can invite them in. You can create the spaces that exist, whether it's digitally, whether it's in person, whether it's at the commission meetings, whether it's on programs like this. And you can say, hey, this thing, if you're curious about it, more information exists on it, and you can go look at it, and you can go find out more about it. But then you also have to, if you're going to invite people in, you actually have to pay attention to them, right? So too many times, I kind of say that a lot of times government uses social media almost like a dinner party where we invite people in, but then we don't ever serve them any food and we totally ignore them the whole time that they're there, right? So if we're going to invite people in, we have to be willing to interact with them and communicate with them and go back and forth, because they're going to have questions. They're going to want to know more. Which is great. That means that they're engaging. And so that's the real challenge. And so what I try and tell people is that communications, it's not even, you hear people say, oh, it's two-way communications now. It's not even two-way communications. It's more like a garden and a friendship and a relationship. You have to cultivate and you have to groom and you have to continue to work with people and hear from them and then respond. So it's a challenge for sure, but it's also an incredible opportunity that we've never had at any other period in history for people to directly connect like this.
Yeah, it is a challenge and an opportunity, like so many things in life, really. So David, maybe share a little bit about what you envision. What are some of your, things you're hoping to accomplish or improve over the next 6 months?
So probably the first thing that I want to do is try and help elevate some of the conversations and some of these programs that we have. I always kind of say that bad news will find its way, right? But I don't think that everybody's fully aware all the time of all the incredible stuff that's going on. And so one of the things that I like, that I'd like to see happen for us is to be a little more proactive in talking about the positive developments and putting them into context, showing why they matter and what they're doing to achieve these larger goals and aims. Another aspect that I would like to do is I'd really like to start hearing more from the community. One of the first things I do everywhere I go, and I've moved dozens of times, is I know who I hear from. I don't know who I don't hear from. And so I need to figure out how to hear those voices and elevate those people into the conversation that maybe are out there talking, but we're, for whatever reason, not aware or not engaged with them in a meaningful way. And then the third thing that I'd like to do, and I've already heard this multiple times, is when you invite people into a conversation and they talk and you hear them, but you don't tell them that you heard them, you don't go back and show them what they did, then they're less inclined to continue to participate in the future. And so that's closing that feedback loop, right? We go out and we do community engagement events where we'll ask people to provide input on projects or programs, and they'll give us the stuff, and we'll go off, and in many cases we'll take some of that and we'll actually implement it. But we never functionally go back and explain to them that we did or we didn't, how we use that information, what we did with it, and how it can be valuable. And so closing that loop is probably one of the biggest things. And just so everybody's aware, no city is doing that really well. It's one of those things where every conference we all sit around and we talk about how nobody's really figured out how to do it well yet, but that doesn't mean that you don't try. You have to continue to try and make it happen.
Yeah, that's a great point. I just had a conversation last week with someone who's been engaged, especially early on in the river restoration project, and hasn't heard a lot about it lately, largely because we're still in the permitting process and there's a lot of behind the scenes work happening. Although all that initial input has informed and continues to inform the work that we're doing. And how do we, when you have a project that's going to take 10 or 12 years, how do you keep people engaged, but also have realistic expectations that some of these things, they're just not going to happen right away. Sometimes within
and that's another thing I think we need to do. I think we need to be honest with people. It's not that, not all ideas are good ideas, but not all good ideas are doable. And that's probably the biggest problem we run into, I think, a lot of times, is we just don't be honest with people and tell them, quite frankly, it's like we don't have the funds, we don't have the resources. There are statutory limitations to what we're allowed to do. There are regulatory limitations of what we're allowed to do. I mean, and I don't think that we often enough just stand up and say, government cannot achieve all things, but it can set the conditions for people to achieve those. And so we just need to be honest about what we can do and what we can't.
Yeah, and I think that's an important message that we probably don't relay enough. I feel like we did it more so, 12, 13 years ago during the economic downturn, when people would bring forward ideas and we would just say, we don't have the resources or capacity. We'd love for you to take it on and we'll support you. But as you said, not everything can be led, or it really should be led by government. There are many things where we come alongside as a partner, but we don't necessarily have to be leading the effort. And actually, many times the result is better. So, and faster sometimes. So any final thoughts before we finish up this segment that you want to share with folks who are just meeting you for the very first time, or what they can expect? I think this is a good opportunity to share how people can sign up for our electronic newsletters. That's a great way to stay informed.
Sure. And so if you actually just go to the city's website and you pull up the GR News Hub, there's a variety of different ways that you can sign up for some of our various products and our digital properties that will allow you to get in there and see the various ways in which you can communicate and contact with us. I'd also just say, I really do mean that I want to hear from all of you. And so please feel free to reach out to me directly. You can email me, you can find me. I'm just type in, our website's got a really great search function. Go to the search bar on the city's website, and just type in communications, and my office will pop up. And please just reach out. Let's connect. I want to hear. I can't do a good job if I don't know what it is people need. And so I need you to tell me what it is that you want and need, because otherwise I'm just going to keep trying to do what I know how to do. And that may not be the most effective way to communicate with this community.
Well, I appreciate your openness. I know I've already sent people your way. And I know that you'll be meeting with so I have a next gen advisory board made up of really brilliant next generation leaders and millennials. And I know they have lots of ideas about how to improve communications, and you'll be spending some time with them to hear their input. So thank you for that. So reach out to David if you want to connect or you have ideas to share. Go online and figure out a way to sign up for our electronic newsletters or follow us on social media. That's a great way to stay informed. And just as David is, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have as well. But with that, looks like we're out of time for this segment, and we'll come back together and open it up for Linda to ask David some questions. Linda, who is an expert in this communication space, probably has her own thoughts around this issue.
It's just a thank you. I've had a good time with your station, and I got nothing else but thank you. Keep going.
And welcome back to City Connection. Following up on Mayor's visit with new Communications Director David Green, we do have some questions from community members. So David, we're going to start firing them right at you. You asked and people responded. So this question coming from Ashley, she said, Austin recently used funds that they cut from police budget to buy a hotel to provide housing for the homeless. Is this something that Grand Rapids can do?
Well, one, I would say that I no longer work in Austin, and this particular transaction took place after I left. So I don't know all of the details. I do know, my understanding is that the funds to purchase these hotels, and we've been doing that for a few years back in Austin, were actually coming, they're capital funds. They're coming from bonds and some various grants and stuff. And that the operating funds for the hotel were actually going to come from the savings. But that's something that the press has done a pretty good job down in Austin covering that. What I would say is it's not really my place to say what policy we're going to enact or we're going to go after, but I think that some of the things you've seen in Austin are a good example of innovative ideas. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we need to hear from the community, is these kind of innovative ideas to bring forth, because there are millions of people in the world that have great ideas, and sometimes we just don't hear them, either because they don't think that they're worth telling, or we're not able to bring them to kind of surface those up. And so those are exactly the kinds of things that we should be trying to find, is these great ideas that then, staff like myself can then bring to policymakers and say, hey, we saw this idea, looks like it might be viable, looks like it's a good idea, what do you think? And then kind of set those conditions to have that conversation at that policy level.
Okay. Mayor, anything you want to add to that? Or?
No, I think David is absolutely right. We've looked at that, especially this past year with the pandemic. We have worked with a couple nonprofits to provide support for hotel stays. And in fact, there is a partnership right now with the county to have a hotel available for individuals who test positive for COVID. Short term, that may be a solution, but again, it's not, in my opinion, the long-term solution. We need to look at cost, and if the cost is close to the cost of providing rent where someone can have their own place to stay and a roof over their head and have their family there and have independence, that to me is a better solution. So again, it does come down to looking at the idea and the cost and where the dollars are coming from. And Austin, obviously, their budget is quite a bit different than ours. I know people send me ideas from other cities all the time. Austin has access to revenues that we don't have. And again, so you just got to look at revenue sources as well as long-term sustainability and where you put dollars when it comes to providing long-term stable housing for individuals.
Okay. Well, David, this question is a little bit more within your sphere, so let me send this one to you from Holly, and it says, I've heard the city say a lot that it wants to make sure it makes data-driven actions, but people's stories are often lost in the data. So how do you make sure that you can include personal experiences of the public while looking at the data?
I think you do it in two ways. Probably the biggest one, especially from a staff point, is you bring in a variety of different types of people. I myself, I understand data. I believe in data, but I'm not a data-driven person. I'm a story-driven person. I'm a creative. I like to hear from people. I want to dig into the nuance and hear the emotion and the passion and the thinking that the data doesn't always show. And having both sides in the room really helps that. But the data is important because the data provides the context around which you tell the story. And so it's kind of funny. I was just today having a conversation with one of my counterparts who works with open data, and we were talking about how are we going to find new and creative ways to tell the city story using the data, but not letting the data be the story. Spreadsheets don't help you understand complex problems. They help you understand the data points, the specifics of the complex problems, but they don't help me understand a human's suffering. They don't help me understand a human's joy when something goes well for them, right? And so we have to figure out a way to marry those two up. And it's a great question because it really is something we were just doing today, right? Data is important because data should absolutely drive decisions. But at the end of the day, you have to remember the data is reflective of human beings. And that's why we're all here, is to try and make the world a better place and try and help the people in this community.
Okay. Yeah, very good point there on both sides. And again, just wanted to offer that up to you, Mayor. Anything you would like to add?
Yeah, no, it's so interesting. I was just talking about this, about data last week it was related to childhood lead poisoning. And I think David is right. You know, the data is valuable. And we've made a point here at the city to not just have use data, but we've made a point to disaggregate our data by race, but also to make it available and very transparent. So you've seen the creation of our scoreboards and our dashboards. All of that is really important. And specifically to our work around lead poisoning, you know, the fact that we're able to utilize data to identify what neighborhoods in our city we're seeing the highest percentage of kids test positive for lead poisoning, and then drill down into that data. It's helping us work in partnership with the county in elevating the issue, looking at it, you know, through the work we're doing on the action team, to say we're going to try a pilot and we're going to be very targeted based on the data. And then, as David said, how do we bring in those stories from families and moms and children? Fortunately, we have a great partner with Healthy Homes, and they have a parent group that we've been working really closely with.
Okay, all right, thank you. This question is pretty much a ground level one, and I bet all of you city officials hear this one a lot, but it says, this one comes from Chad, and it says, if a city plow knocks over my mailbox, does the city help with that?
So here's my answer to that. I don't know. And I think it's okay to say sometimes that I don't think we do it enough. I think we try and dance around and give an answer. I think the right answer is call 311. Anytime that you're unsure of something, your best bet is to call 311, and they will connect you with the appropriate resources or the programs or the people who at least have the answer, because that's not me. That being said, if you do ever have a question and you have a problem getting a hold of 311, email me and I'll route it and try and figure out an answer, because I never tell people that I don't do it. My job is to answer questions. I just don't happen to know the answer to that one.
This would be a good time. Tell us your contact information.
So my contact information right now, the easiest way to get a hold of me, because I'm all over the place and working everywhere, and I have not yet memorized my phone number at work, is going to be just to email me at dgreen@grand-rapids.mi.us.
Okay.
So that's going to be the easiest way to get a hold of me. Plus, it also reaches me at every device, everywhere I am. I have iPads and laptops and cell phones, and all of them are now connected, like most people, to my email. So it will pop up. I will see it. And that'll be the best way to reach me.
Okay, just wanted to put that out there. I have a question, just because I'm always interested in a newcomer to our city and their perspective as they come into the city new. But you've mentioned that you grew up in a military family, and then your own military career that's allowed you to live in many different places. So I would really love to hear some of your perspectives of Grand Rapids, what we're poised to do, what you see.
So I would say, so the first thing I'll say is that I see a city that has an incredible amount of promise. I'm going to use Austin as an example because my roots in Austin, even though I was just there, I first went to Austin in 1995 as a soldier, just stationed at Fort Hood, which is about 35, 40 minutes outside of town. And I feel, there's a lot I feel in Grand Rapids that I felt there in the 90s. You know, there is an incredible creative energy that's here. There's incredible pride in the local community. There are a plethora of natural resources that are available here between the rivers and the trails. It's just, I get this sense that this is a city that is doing things already, but is nowhere near done. Right? There is more to come. from the city, and that's part of the reason I wanted to come here, was because I really did feel this energy that there's something special happening here. You can't quite put your finger on it, but that's what makes it special, right? If you could put your finger on it, everybody could just replicate it. And I say that to, in the sense that you're right. I've been all over the world, and I've been to 90 some odd countries in my lifetime. I've lived in like 7 or 8 different countries, dozens of cities. And I chose to live here because I really did feel something about this place. When it came time to pick which of these jobs I was really gonna fight for and really pursue, this one rose up to the top of that list. So I don't quite know how else to say it other than something special is happening here, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Okay. What was one of your first new finds in Grand Rapids, whether it be a restaurant or a place or a park or something like that?
So I arrived the week that they shut everything down again back in December. So one of my first discoveries, which was really cool, was the outdoor eating enclosures, the igloos, or the what boggled my mind. It had never occurred to me you could put a bubble over a table. And so that was probably my first really new thing. The other thing that I realized very quickly was people were like, oh yeah, everything's about 20 minutes away, and it really is about 20 minutes away. So that was the other thing that, just to find that I was back in a place where people measure distance by time, because you can't.
Yeah. A little different than getting around in Austin, Texas.
Say that exact thing. That is quite different than Austin.
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple more minutes, and David, I wanted to leave it to you. Is there anything you want to tell us a little bit about plans, projections, anything you want to let us know?
Like I said, I want people to understand that I think a lot of times there's this perception that, we come into these jobs and we're pretty, like in my case, I'm a professional communicator, and I come into this job and it's a job. And I really do think that we don't do a good enough job sometimes of talking about public sector. I wear the term bureaucrat as a badge of pride, because it means that I've found a calling and a function and a profession that I think is valuable. I have watched over the past few years, and especially over the past several months, as communities have tried to navigate these pandemics, just the incredible amount of professionalism and passion and empathy and caring. Nobody joins public service work to become rich, wealthy, and famous, because there are much easier ways to do that. And so I'm always amazed at how dedicated you see these folks, and I want to be able to tell those stories. But at the same time, part of the reason it's so hard to tell those stories is because none of those people want those stories told, because their focus is always on the community, and it's always on the people that are out there. And so when I say I want to hear from you, I really do mean that, because I want to do a good job, but I want to do a good job for you. It's not because I need some sort of accolade. And I think you'll find that that's true across the entirety in the spectrum of public sector employees.
Okay. One last question for you, and then we'll go to break. But what is the one thing about Grand Rapids that we maybe don't know about ourselves yet that you think, as somebody coming new to the city, should realize? And you did mention a few things earlier, but.
Yeah, I think that probably the biggest thing that I don't think Grand Rapids quite realizes yet, and I think you see this, and what I've noticed is this cycle of people, they grow up here, they leave because they're like, oh, I got to get out of here, and then they come back, and I think it's because they realize that this is just a really neat city, and all the things that people complain about, the parking, the roads, some of those things are, they're true, and they take work, but at the same time, you come to realize when you live other places and all over the world that they're universal problems. And so really what makes a difference is the community, and this place has a community, a sense of community that far exceeds many of the other places I've lived.
Okay. David Green, new communications director for the city of Grand Rapids. Welcome to Grand Rapids, and look forward to working with you and hearing more from you. Thank you.
Thanks.
We're going to take a break, and then Mayor Bliss and I will be back for a few questions and a little more information for you. This is City Connection.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
Welcome back to City Connection after our visit with Communications Director David Green. Mayor Bliss and I have a little bit more time with you, and we're going to cover a few more things. Well, let's start with vaccine for COVID. Mayor Bliss, what's the situation in our community, and what are some steps we can be doing?
Yeah, so we, we're so fortunate in our community to have our health department. Dr. London has been fantastic throughout this entire pandemic. But the health department has been working really closely with Spectrum and Mercy to have a centralized way for people to sign up to get a vaccine. So we have smaller vaccine clinics throughout the community. Several of them are very targeted into high-risk communities. And then we have the large vaccine clinic at DeVos Place. At full capacity, DeVos Place will be able to provide up to 35,000 vaccines a day. But it's just contingent on having availability of the vaccines. So I encourage people, if they haven't gone to the website to sign up, there's a short little questionnaire that you fill out, and then you sign up, and you basically get in a queue for as soon as the vaccine is available in your category. Then you get an email and a phone call with opportunities to sign up for an appointment to get the vaccine. So it's really important that people do that for a couple of reasons. One, we want to know how many people are eager to get a vaccine so that we can make the case to the governor's office and to our federal partners that we can get vaccines into arms, which is a question that we're getting asked a lot. So as they figure out a distribution process, we want to make sure that we're getting as many vaccines as we possibly can. And then also, we know that people getting vaccinated is going to be key to recovery and reducing the probability that individuals will get COVID or die from COVID. And so that's our big push right now. We're hopeful to accelerate vaccines. We're doing anywhere between 8,000 and 10,000 a week over at the vaccine clinic. But as I said, we're hopeful to have that ramped up as soon as vaccines become available.
Any sense on the percent of our community that is vaccinated so far?
Oh, I looked at the numbers last Friday, and we are right around 90,000. Okay. And again, you need 2 shots, so you need the first shot and then the second one 3 weeks later. But we're hitting about probably by today, because we had some clinics happen over the weekend. We're probably closer to that 100,000 mark. But we're a county of about 650,000. The nice thing about this clinic is that we'll be able to support the entire region. So Spectrum serves 16 counties, and we would be available to help counties that don't have the resources to set up a clinic like this.
Okay, and you said get registered for this, and is that largely through the county website? Because I've seen emails from different pharmacies as well as the county.
Yeah, go to the AccessKent/health website, and there's right a top banner that shows where you can go to sign up.
Okay. Well, thanks for that really critical information. Wanted to bring up and have you tell us a little bit about a new opportunity, or a report maybe it is. It's a citizens finance report and something we can see a little bit about the city's finances.
Yeah, so this is it's called the CAFR, that's the acronym, but it's a citizens assessment for our city finances. And every year our city comptroller puts it together. And one of the things when Max France became our comptroller, one of his top priorities was to create a more user-friendly and understandable CAFR. He really wanted to explain city finances in a way that was easy to understand. And so he worked with a team internally here at City Hall and created the citizen report on the city finances. And it's a 9-page report. You can find it online at the city's website. And it includes a number of charts and graphs, and it breaks down everything from our revenues, where we get them, our expenditures, how much we're paying in pension costs and post-retirement healthcare. So when you talk about the city budget, sometimes people don't fully appreciate how much money we're paying in benefits, not just active benefits, but also we have a lot of long-term liabilities that we're currently paying for individuals who've been retired. And so this report does a nice job of breaking that down, as well as differentiating between our general fund dollars, which is where we have the opportunity to make decisions, versus enterprise funds. So it's a really nicely broken down report, along with diagrams to help people better understand city budget.
Okay. Another city initiative that I wanted to see where it stands is there was opportunity for community organizations to bid on addressing gun violence, or just maybe generally violence here in Grand Rapids. I wanted to know where that process is.
Yeah, so that is, so we did put out a request for proposals through our Office of Public Oversight and Accountability. So Brandon Davis is leading that. So we put out a request for proposals. We did get a couple of responses. We have an internal team assessing those responses, and that includes both someone from Brandon's office and our police department. I believe our county prosecutor serves on that subcommittee. And so we'll be taking a look at those. We want to be very explicit that it has to be evidence-based. So it has to be an evidence-based violence prevention effort specifically that will target a reduction in gun violence. So I haven't seen those proposals yet because they're still being worked through the committee who's reviewing those. But one of my top priorities is to move forward with an evidence-based violence prevention program similar to Cure Violence Ceasefire. There's a number of good models out there, and in my opinion, it's long overdue. We need to move forward. We have identified a number of partners in our community, philanthropic partners, who are willing to also help with the funding of an initiative and braid both our public money with some private dollars to make it happen. But it's one of my top priorities. I know it's a priority to the chief as well. In fact, he just talked last week. We had a public safety committee meeting, and he gave an update on crime stats from last year. And then he talked about his commitment to support a violence prevention program. As you know, and many people in our community know, last year we saw a record number of incidents related to gun violence as well as homicides. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen again this year.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to some updates might be coming in future programs then. Wanted to bring up where we left off before we brought in Mr. Green. We were talking a little bit about your State of the City address, and I wanted to get out there the date of that so people can see that, how they can see it, and maybe a few of the other items you're going to touch on.
Yeah, so we're going to do, it'll be different because of this pandemic world that we're living in. So similar to the governor, it'll be a virtual event. So I'll be doing it live I'm actually going to use a listening room space. And so I'll have Chair Bolter will be there to say a few words about county efforts. Our city manager is going to be doing a video of some of the work that we've done internally here at City Hall. And then my hope is probably to do a 20-25-minute speech, so it'll be shorter than years past. I'll try to be as concise as possible. I'll focus on a look back on 2019 and lessons learned, and then looking at the year ahead. And the 3 priority areas that I'll talk about are public safety, How do we make sure that we have a safe city for everyone? And then I'll talk about housing and economic recovery. So, and one point about public safety, and this was shared last week as well at our public safety committee, is that we also last year saw a record number of house fires and individuals who died from house fires. So there's a lot we need to do around making sure that we're a safe city. And then for date and time, it's going to be a little bit different than last year. I'm going to do it at noon on Tuesday, February 16th. So that will be live. You can follow it on my Facebook page, and then we'll also have it up on the YouTube channel.
All right, so that's 2 weeks from tomorrow. We're happy to broadcast it too, should you be interested. So just want to put that out there.
Yes, I would. So I'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Okay. We don't have a ton of time, but I did want to bring up one more thing because it touched on something that you were just mentioning, and economic recovery and affordable living, all that. I hear there's a jobs initiative, or maybe that's coming up this coming year, that there's some new efforts related to jobs.
Yeah, so there's actually a number of workforce development efforts that we'll be partnering with. First, here at the city, we'll hopefully grow and expand our Grow 1000 program. So last year through our Grow 1000 program, and that is a program where we recruit young people between the ages of 16 and 24 who live in the city, and we match them up with summer jobs, meaningful summer jobs. Mm-hmm. So we want to get them into law firms and health systems and accounting fields. And we took on about 20 interns here at City Hall in different departments. So last year we had about 480 young people participate in that. And this year we're hoping to get to 1,000. So we'll be launching that in May. And it starts with a leadership and training program that we provide here at the city. And then we'll match those young people to hopefully meaningful summer jobs, part-time summer jobs. But then we've also worked really closely with our community college. So they have a number of programs that open up opportunities for people to get certification programs or attend community college at no cost. So there's the Reconnect Michigan, there's the Future for Frontliners. Obviously last year we kicked off the Promise Zone for young people who graduate in the city of Grand Rapids. So we'll be continuing to work with them. And then also through a task force that I have, one final thing real quick, is that we are working really closely with big companies to try to get them to do similar to what we've done at the city and be hyper local focused in their procurement. So how do we support our local businesses, especially after the tough year that they've had?
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine that your State of the City address is going to be a little bit different than anything before, and these very critical areas you've just been talking about being high on that list. We're done for today. I want to thank you for joining us again, Mayor. We'll be back 1 month from today on March 1st. We're scheduled to do the next City Connection. So with Mayor Rosalynn Bliss, I'm Linda Gellasch, and this is City Connection on GRTV's Livewire Channel 24 and Channel 25.